Honorable members, shall we pray? Almighty God, we humbly beseech thee to look with favor upon this Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. Grant that it may perform its high duty as in thy sight. Give divine guidance to the President of the Republic, endow members of Parliament and ministers of state with discernment and vision, integrity and courage, that through the labors of government, this land and people may be well and truly served, and thy good for the common human life be realized in our midst. O God, grant us a vision of our country, fair as it might be, a country of righteousness, where none shall wrong his neighbor, a country of plenty, where evil and poverty shall be done away with, a country of brotherhood, where all success shall be founded on service and honor shall be given to the deserving, a country of peace, where government shall rest on the will of the people and the love for the common good. Bless the effort of those who struggle to make this vision a living reality. Inspire and strengthen our people that they may give time, thought, and sacrifice to speed the day of the coming beauty of Ghana and Africa. Amen. Honorable members, shall we turn to item 4? Item 4 on today's order paper. Correction of votes and proceedings and official report. We begin with correction of votes and proceedings. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page number 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Yes, Honourable Member for Saudi.
Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. Speaker, on page 8, items number 15, 23, 28, and 40 are members who were in the House yesterday. That will be Honourable Member for Jirapa, Honourable Dapila was in the House. 23, Muhammad Farouk Umar Aliu was in the House. Bismarck Nakutete, he was in the House. And 40, the Honourable Okubanakwe was also in the House, but they've been marked absent. So if the table of it can be correct. Thank you.
Were they in the chamber? Then I'll have to repeat. But did they sign the attendance book? Honorable Okubanakwe, did you sign the attendance book? Did you? It comes back to what I said at that time. Please, when we come to the chamber, let's make time to sign the attendance book. Because at times it will appear as if the table is deliberately leaving people's names. But if you come here and you don't take time to register your presence, it's a bit. So please, let's take note. I think I made this announcement the other time. I'm repeating it again. Please, let's take note of that. So, table, please kindly take note of the corrections.
Speaker, just for purposes of guidance, I know that you directed that in addition to the signing of the register, the table office will also take into consideration business on the floor at the close of day, so that in addition to members who actually participated on the floor but did not sign their register, they could based on that mark them present, just for guidance going forward.
Honorable member for Sabda, that will be too much for the table. I believe the table over here will be making sure whatever you are contributing is recorded. They will not also, I don't think, will be in position to know that whether you've registered on the attendance book or not. So please, the onus lies on us. If you come, please make it a point to register your presence. Please. We move to page 9. Page number 10. Page 11. Page 12. Page 13. Page 14. Page number 15. Page number 16. Page 17. Page 18. Page 19. Yes, leader.
Mr. Speaker, not a correction. Page 16, Committee on Health. And then item 2, I see 4 members listed. Mr. Speaker, it doesn't appear that they even formed a quorum of 4. Okay. How many? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, leader.
Speaker, just to assist the respected minority leader, it was a special committee formed, and the membership was limited to that number. So it wasn't the traditional committee, health committee, as in its true sense.
Well. Thank you for the correction. So we move to page 19. Page 20. Page number 21. Yes, honorable member for Sada.
Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. Speaker, item number 3V, where
which page?
Under
which page?
Page 21, Speaker. The name of the company is National Food Buffer Stock Company. But I see that they've written National Food Stock Buffer Company. Indeed, it was incorporated in 2010.
Very well. Very well. Table, kindly take note of that.
And consequentially, wherever they have
Yes.
need the correction. Thank you.
So we turn to page 22. Page 23. Page number 24. Page 25. Page 26. Page 27. Page 28. Page number 29. And finally, page 30. Honourable members, in the absence of any further corrections, the votes and proceedings of the 24th sitting held yesterday, Wednesday, the 6th July 2022, are adopted as a true record of proceedings. Honourable members, we have the 14th June 2022 edition of the official report. 14th June 2022 official report. Yes, Honourable Member for Northton.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the second paragraph at column 37, 1,200 should be captured accurately without the comma at the end of the 200. And then the second paragraph at column 38, he also used the occasion to assure our compatriots, not assured. So if the correction could be effected. The second paragraph at column 38. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Yes, table, kindly take note. Honourable members, in the absence of any further corrections, the official report of 14 June 2022 is hereby adopted as a true record of proceedings. We turn to item 5. Item 5, questions. And I believe the questions are directed to Minister for Information. So, Honourable Minister, may you take your rightful seat. Very well, very well. The IMF minister has sat down. So, Honourable Minister, let me invite Honourable Member. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, sorry, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Kojo Okonkroma, since you mentioned his name, I don't know, of late we've been seeing him talking about IMF program. I don't know whether he's coming to give us a brief on the IMF program.
No.
Mr. Speaker, because he looks like the chief negotiator of the IMF program.
Yes, leader.
Speaker, I see my colleague, the excitement, the faces of colleagues, and clearly my colleagues are responding to the ever responsible leadership that the Minister for Information has shown over the few days. So I see my colleagues are excited, and they are commending the Minister for Information for good work done so far. But on a more serious note, Speaker, in these matters we always defer to you. I'm sure it's a slip of the mind. Speaker, you had said that IMF minister, if I could plead, that is a sponge from the records. He's actually the minister responsible for information and not.
Yes, leader.
Mr. Speaker, I want to be sure what my colleague, the majority whip said. Did you say it's the minister responsible for misinformation, or what did you say?
Mr. Speaker, he's my colleague. We just returned from the Pan-African Parliament, and he knows I'm referring to. And when we went to Pan-African Parliament, myself and him had some private discussion, and he was full of praises for the Minister of Information. He was full of praises. And on a more serious note, I said, Minister, read my lips. The minister responsible for information, the ever capable minister. That's what I said.
Honorable members, I guess we take things lightly. So, honorable members, expunge that aspect from the records. So let's invite honorable member for Medina to begin the question. Yes.
Speaker, thank you. Speaker, I rise to ask your leave to add the authority of the member for Medina to seek your leave to ask the question on his behalf. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, on the very vivacious note, may I rise to ask the Minister for Information and IMF Affairs. Mr. Speaker, I will withdraw that. I will withdraw the IMF Affairs. To ask the Minister for Information the measures being put in place to safeguard media freedom as guaranteed by the 1992 Constitution. I thank you.
Yes, honorable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on a lighter note, the minister responsible for information is also responsible for curing misinformation. Mr. Speaker, since June 2019, the Ministry of Information, working closely with the National Media Commission and other key actors in the media space, initiated a number of interventions aimed at safeguarding media freedom in the country. One of such is the establishment of the coordinated mechanism on the safety of journalists. The mechanism seeks to achieve 4 key objectives. 1, to provide regular training for state and non-state actors on the safety of journalists and the need to ensure that journalists and media practitioners are not harmed for the work they do. 2, to provide annual accountability platforms for reported infringements against the safety of journalists or against journalists. 3, to provide validation of reported infringements on the safety of journalists. And 4, publication of annual domestic reports on the safety of journalists. The Constitution under Article 1661 provides for the establishment of the National Media Commission to, among others, quote, promote and ensure the freedom and independence of the media for mass communication or information. Pursuant to this, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Information requested the National Media Commission to execute this mechanism. The Ministry provided set-up support to the NMC and requested other affiliate bodies to extend additional support. The NMC, using the industry of this office, has been instrumental in the training of journalists under the Media Capacity Enhancement Program. This is in line with the first objective of the mechanism. Additionally, the NMC, through the industry of the office, successfully validated and followed up for correction the report of alleged assault on CTFM journalists on the 11th of May 2021. Mr. Speaker, I must state that even though the National Media Commission has started well, their efforts have been challenged mainly because of a lack of financial and technical resources. This has affected the pace at which they handle cases that are reported to them. While we continue to encourage the NMC to stay on course on this path, we also appeal to development partners and other stakeholders to support the NMC to enhance its operations. Mr. Speaker, when the report of attacks on journalists are brought to our attention, government quickly condemns such attacks and engages to identify and prosecute offenders. The Ministry of Information recently condemned attacks on journalists at Radio Adan and Benya FM and urged, through direct interactions with the police to act with dispatch against the perpetrators. Further, I have also made strong appeals to the judiciary to punish severely persons found guilty of attacking journalists. This was contained in my statement to judges during the sensitization for members of the bench and prosecutors on the Press Freedom Sensitization Workshop, which took place in Ho on the 20th of June 2022. On a regular basis, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of the Interior also updates us on the status of investigations of some of the key reported attacks in our jurisdiction, and we continue to urge them to quicken the pace of investigations where those investigations remain open. Mr. Speaker, to conclude, I want to call on stakeholders to support the coordinated mechanism for the safety of journalists to ensure that it delivers what it has been set up to achieve. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'll give you one supplementary question because you are not the owner of the question. So,
Mr. Speaker, I was hoping that we make it two.
Just ask the question.
Very well. Speaker, I thank you. Mr. Speaker, I reference paragraph 2.2, which is to the effect that the mechanism that his ministry has established to provide annual accountability platforms for reported infringements on the safety of journalists. Mr. Speaker, I want to find out from the Honourable Minister whether any such report has been given between the last 12 months since the introduction of this mechanism. Thank you.
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the National Media Commission informs us that they are in the process of calling the maiden annual accountability platform, which would have officials of state agencies, including the police and other agencies that often come in contact with our colleagues of the Fourth Estate, and primarily those that are responsible for investigating alleged attacks, as well as media groupings such as the Ghana Journalists Association, the Private Independent Newspapers Association, that is SPRINGPAG, the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, so that whatever outstanding or other matters that have been raised can be accounted for at that table. Mr. George Sapon of the NMC assures me that we should expect that maiden one within the next quarter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Yes, let him come to Honourable Member for Daku.
Right, Honourable Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity, and we want to thank our colleague for his diligence to the House. I want to ask the Minister, in the last 10 years, can you recall how many cases involving attacks on journalists have been successfully prosecuted and the perpetrators punished?
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my colleague for the follow-up question. It is for precisely this reason that this coordinated mechanism has a platform for publication of annual domestic reports on the safety of journalists. The reason is that, Mr. Speaker, because of the kind of media environment that we operate, you will find sometimes online or here on the airwaves some person alleging an attack on a journalist. there's a need first to determine whether this is an attack on the journalist in the line of his duty as a journalist. We have had instances in this country where journalists have legitimately been attacked, but at least from the police investigation, it had nothing to do with their work as journalism. We have also had instances in this country where journalists have claimed even to have been kidnapped, where in the end it turned out to be untrue. So it is important to have a proper mechanism for accounting for all of these. Our research shows that there is no proper state mechanism for accounting for this. You will find some civil society organizations pick reports from online. Much as you cannot begrudge them for that, it is important for the state to have a proper record. The National Media Commission, in accordance with Article 1661, is in our estimating the appropriate body to do this. And through this mechanism, they will have the opportunity to prepare these numbers for all of us to track and determine whether we are doing better or worse as the years go by. My hope is that when they commence that, we'll be able to have some numbers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, I'll have to manage the time. Other than that, we have 1 hour to run through all the questions. So let me come to Honourable Member for Northton.
I'm very grateful, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to find out from the Honourable Minister for Information what he is doing about our current ranking on the World Press Freedom Index, which is at an all-time low. We dropped from 30th to the 60th position in the world. We've lost our number 1 spot in Africa. We are now 10th, dropping from 3rd in just the previous year. It doesn't look good at all, and that's not the kind of image we want to have, particularly under your watch as a former practitioner yourself. Can you outline measures you are taking to bring us back to the glorious days where we were ranked number 1 in Africa and we were a beacon of hope and a shining example for others to emulate? So our drastic fall on the World Press Freedom Index and what you are doing about it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Speaker, thank you. And I thank my colleague for the follow-up question. It is a matter of concern to myself, primarily also because I am still a practitioner, even though I practice in a different capacity now, and it's a matter of collective interest to us. Mr. Speaker, first, it is important to clearly understand what the RFS Press Freedom Index, as published recently, actually means. It is important to state from the onset that the RFS has amended the methodology, and therefore press freedom in accordance with their methodology is not just about the security of journalists. Indeed, the security of journalists is one of 5 parameters that they measure. They measure the media landscape itself, the political context, what they call the freedom, the legal framework, the economic context, and then the security of journalists. Mr. Speaker, to enable Ghana, not just the executive branch, or maybe Parliament, or one civil society organization, to enable Ghana come to a certain common understanding of what this report is, I called a meeting of the key stakeholders in the sector at the Ministry of Information earlier this month to jointly peruse and analyze the report. Mr. Speaker, when we are done with that analysis, and this had the various media stakeholders, including some of which I have mentioned earlier, it became obvious that according to the 5 parameters assessed under the new methodology, Ghana scored very high in terms of the legal framework, 81.42%, the social cultural context, 79.64%. Ghana also recorded above average and moderately high scores for political context, that is 66.61%, and security of journalists, 62.25%. Security of journalists, 62.25%. The only parameter in which Ghana performed below average, which dragged us very heavily on the composite score, was the economic context, 47.22%. And by economic context, RFS refers to the poverty of individual journalists and media houses. And the facts are clear in this country that because we have opened up the media landscape extensively, which is a very good thing, a number of media houses have sprung up, a good chunk of which struggle to make ends meet. Indeed, I think even this week you will find reports in some of the media or on some of the media platforms about media houses struggling to pay salaries. And the RFS contends that when journalists are not paid, the ability to do a sacrosanct free job is questionable. And they score us very, very low on that. When media houses are not able to make ends meet, the ability to do independent and sacrosanct journalism sometimes is brought into question. And so, Mr. Speaker, when the various stakeholders had the opportunity to analyze this report, we came up collectively with a number of recommendations. And I'd like to outline a few. One, we agreed that we should work in collaboration with the National Media Commission to deepen the execution of the coordinated mechanism on the safety of journalists, which deals with the question of the security of journalists. That is just one of the 5 pillars that they measure. We also agree that we have to collaborate to deepen education for state and non-state actors in particular on the safety of journalists. Because, Mr. Speaker, as we are finding out, sometimes the attacks on journalists are perpetrated by non-state actors who have respectfully some very limited understanding of the role of the media in a democracy like ours. We also agree that we want to address the RFS concern about the poor economic condition of most journalists in the country. And we will do that by advocating for and engaging media associations to improve working and economic conditions of my colleague journalists. Mr. Speaker, we also agree that we want to collaborate in the fight against disinformation and the spread of fake news. Earlier, we were making light of comments in that area. But, Mr. Speaker, the RFS report mentions that it is one of the major contributors to our low ranking in terms of the Press Freedom Index. The detail of the report outlines all of that. And we need to be a bit more aggressive in fighting disinformation and the spread of fake news. We have to do that, however, by balancing whatever actions we take with respect for the freedoms that our Constitution upholds. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister, were you anticipating this particular supplementary question?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, because as you prepare for these questions, you must have a certain understanding of the key issues in the public domain that you should respond to. So, yes, Mr. Speaker, we're anticipating.
Yes, Honorable. Let me go to is it Bia West?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In answering the question, the minister indicated that the NMC is hampered or challenged by financial and technical resources. I want to ask the minister how that is possible, because it appears they have a work program, it is presented to Parliament, Parliament approves, and there's appropriation bill. So why would their work be hampered by lack of financial and technical resources? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the National Media Commission presents its budget to Parliament, and Parliament approves a budget for the National Media Commission, just like many of the other independent constitutional bodies to function with. Mr. Speaker, as we have added more, may I say, responsibilities to the already existent responsibilities, it is becoming obvious that the budgets as approved by Parliament for the National Media Commission are not adequate for the task that is set out for them to execute. It is a primary reason for which I say that their resources, particularly the financial resources, are limited. Indeed, we from our ministry have had to, out of our limited vote, support them to implement the coordinated mechanism on the safety of journalists. And we have had to be making some appeals to other bodies to also support them. So, Mr. Speaker, may I take advantage of this opportunity to appeal to this House that when the National Media Commission's budget for the next fiscal year appears, we join in advocacy that they get a bigger vote so that they are stronger to do their job better than they are doing currently. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, let me give the last floor to Honorable Minority Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since the Minister in his answer has elaborated in very detailed steps and measures that his ministry and other agencies are putting in place to ensure the safety of journalists and the practice of journalism, may I take this opportunity to just find out from him whether there's any new update on the death of Ahmed Swale and whether his ministry is taking some other steps to fast track whatever information that is there so that we can bring finality to the death of Ahmed Swale. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for the question. Once again, we will reiterate our commiserations to the family for that loss. Mr. Speaker, in my substantive answer, I mentioned that regularly we engage the Ministry of the Interior to get an update of outstanding matters with reference to alleged attacks on persons who are journalists. Every time we ask for an update, we are told that the police that is responsible for that investigation updates that investigation remains open and that they are still on that investigation. Mr. Speaker, that is the latest update, even as we encourage and urge them to fast track that. That is the information that I have in response to my colleague's question.
Very well. Anyway, I can't deny my leader. So, leader, let's hear you.
Mr. Speaker, mine is not necessarily a question, but I should seek your indulgence and leave to make the comment. And Mr. Speaker, as I listen to the Honorable Minister for Information, I'm concerned about the rights and freedoms of the media and their independence. And Mr. Speaker, to remind him that I do not get the understanding that the media is under the Ministry of Information. Neither do I want to accept that the National Media Commission is under the Ministry of Information. I see you as also even as Minister for Information, subject to the regulatory mandate of the National Media Commission as established under Article 162 to 167 of the Constitution. But Mr. Speaker, in answering your question, you said advocacy. We don't do the allocation here, so be strong at cabinet to say that the president must make enough resources to support you and to support the National Media Commission. Parliament, you know, we are helpless in this matter. Mr. Speaker, as I said, is a comment. Because the National Media Commission, as you know, I serve on the Special Budget Committee, even monitoring equipment in the countries, they do not have. If anybody goes on a local language and says something damning, which tears this country apart, we will not be able to respond appropriately. So I sympathize with you, but I don't want to go home with the notion as if you are extending your ministerial powers beyond the IMF to regulating the national media.
Very well. Minister, I don't think this calling you to respond to. We move to question 1086. Question 1086. And I just saw the owner of the question entering the chamber. So, Honorable Member for Botiano English, Amanfrom, may you now ask your question.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. I rise to ask the Minister for Information, progress of implementation of the Right to Information Act 2019, Act 989, and how many information officers have been assigned to the public institutions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the 28th of June 2022, I appeared before this House to provide a detailed statement on the implementation of the Right to Information Act thus far. Mr. Speaker, during that interaction, I informed this House that the ATI division of the Information Services Department has recruited, trained, and posted 87 RTI officers to 87 public institutions so far, though the remaining 452 public institutions do not have RTI officers from the ATI division resident and responding to requests. Already available officers who handle other duties within these institutions have been trained and designated as RTI officers to handle requests therein. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Yes, Honorable Sylvester Tete, any supplementary question?
Yes, right, Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask the Minister, these officers who are not from the RTI Secretariat, but they are scheduled officers of the various MDAs, assuming they are transferred to other ministries or departments or agencies, how is the ministry equipping the mother agencies they've left? Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker.
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, thank you once again. Indeed, my colleague is right, Mr. Speaker. It is one of the major challenges we are facing. When officers who are designated to respond to RTI requests are sometimes even shifted to a different schedule within the same institution. Mr. Speaker, that's the reason for which we, during my presentation to Parliament a few weeks ago, requested that we get some more support and get financial clearance to recruit more of these officers and gradually populate all the public offices with RTI or ATI officers so that they can respond to requests of information. Currently, what we do is that when an officer is moved from that particular schedule, then we have to retrain somebody else to handle that particular schedule. That obviously adds to costs. It is not a very efficient way of going about it. And the best way out will be to ensure that we properly recruit and post ATI officers to these 452 outstanding institutions. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honourable, I give you your last slot.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask the Minister, has he put in an application or a request for clearance to recruit these officers required for various MDAs? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honourable Minister.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yes, I have put in a request, and yes, we have received communication that that request has been approved. So it will not be affected by some of the things that my colleague fears could affect further recruitment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honourable Member for time.
Yes, almighty time.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Section 77(1) of the RTI Act states that public institutions must offer by 31st December each year submit a written report. In 2020, only 41% of public institutions submitted their reports. What is the state of this particular issue as far as 2021 is concerned? How many public institutions have submitted their annual reports? Thank you.
Yes, Honourable Minister.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the year 2021, a total of 189 public institutions submitted their annual reports on RTI activities with their respective institutions to the RTI Commission. An analysis of these reports revealed that 247 requests for information were received and processed in 65 public institutions, with the Department of Children receiving the highest number of requests for information. That's 34 requests. 64%, that is 159 requests, were granted, while others were refused, deferred, transferred, referred, or denied in accordance with the Act. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. We move to question 1196. Question 1196. And the question stands in the name of a member for Old Tafo, Honorable Vincent Ekos Asafua.
Mr. Speaker, I stand on Order 68.3 and seek your leave to ask the question on behalf of a member who is absent. If you permit me, Mr. Speaker, I'll go on.
Very well.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Minister for Information on efforts the ministry is putting in place to promote decorum.
Minister, Honourable Member, hold on. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, our rules are very clear that a member must stand in his place and ask a question. I see the honourable member asking the question from the place of the honourable Adjua. And that may generate some controversy in the minds of the people. So,
Honourable Carlos, please go and ask the question from here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your wonderful intervention. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Minister for Information on efforts the ministry is putting in place to promote decorum and sanity on our media airwaves.
Thank you very much. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the government of Ghana upholds the principle of a respect for freedom of speech and expression as captured under Article 21(1) of the 1992 Constitution. Indeed, as we live by the mantra that we prefer ugly noises to the culture of silence. Mr. Speaker, the media landscape in Ghana has changed significantly as a result of the introduction of the 1992 Constitution. The landscape...
Please, let's listen to the Minister. The noise appears to be too much. Please. Yes, Minister.
The landscape has undergone radical transformation within the last 3 decades. Today, we have 684 frequency authorizations for FM radio stations and 141 television.
Minister, hold on.
Sir, Speaker, for the records, this House of Records, this seat is Honorable Usubio's seat, not address of. It should be on the record, please. Please, it's Honorable Usubio. Where Carlos was speaking from is Honorable Usubio and not address of. For the records, let's correct it, please. It's important. It is important for the records. This is Honorable Usubio's seat and not address of.
Honorable Member,
for the record, please.
Well noted. My only position is that he should be on. He should ask the question from his seat. Very well. Yes, Minister, let's hear you.
Mr. Speaker, we have 684 frequency authorizations for FM radio stations and 141 authorizations for television stations. Out of the total number of authorized FM broadcasting stations, 489 stations are currently operational as of the fourth quarter of 2021. We are unable to count the number of YouTube channels and other social media applications that offer media content daily. These developments have introduced a refreshing pluralism onto our media landscape and opened up access to new and diverse voices that have promoted democracy and participation in governance and development. Despite these developments, Mr. Speaker, the media landscape is faced with several challenges, including the increasing reports of unethical and indecent content on our airwaves. Right Honourable Speaker, the Ministry of Information, working with media stakeholders, has introduced a number of interventions aimed at addressing this challenge as well. And the interventions are as follows. First, we have the Media Capacity Enhancement Program. It is one of the ministry's support programs for the media sector. The program is key in helping to address the capacity challenges faced by the media as it seeks to play its role effectively as the fourth estate of the realm. In connection with this, Mr. Speaker, we set up an independent working committee.
Honourable members, I don't think it will serve the purpose if we bring the minister here to respond to our own questions and you'll be talking. Please. Yes, Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we set up an independent working committee with a mandate to collaborate with all the stakeholders to do a number of things. First, to identify the knowledge and skill gaps in the industry. Secondly, to organize the necessary training to bridge those gaps. The working committee developed its own curriculum and put together various training programs that are aimed at helping to bridge the skills gap identified in the media landscape. The committee comprises membership of the following: the National Media Commission, the Ghana Journalists Association, the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, the Ghana Institute of Journalism, the Institute of Public Relations, the Private Newspaper Publishers Association, the University of Ghana School of Information and Communication Studies. The task of government through the Ministry of Information has simply been to arrange funding to support this program. So far, training for the first cohort of 58 participants has been held in Kumasi in the Ashanti region, with an official opening ceremony hosted at the Menchia Palace on the 10th of January 2022. By the end of this year, Mr. Speaker, we expect to have provided funding to support the independent group train at least 250 journalists, and we believe this will contribute to resolving the challenge that my colleague raises. Further, Mr. Speaker, the following outcomes are expected: to provide continuous on-the-job training for practicing journalists, to provide a regular platform to support media introspection, to encourage ethical journalism, and to support media practitioners to undertake specialized training in chosen fields. The interest that was generated by participants during this training gives us confidence that it is a worthy program. Mr. Speaker, on the 16th of April 2021, the Ministry of Information further engaged stakeholder institutions in a consultative meeting on issues relevant to broadcasting in Ghana, specifically on ethical and unethical broadcast content. The stakeholders themselves agreed that to address this scenario, they need to set up a joint working group under the auspices of the National Media Commission to examine and to determine what constitutes ethical and unethical content, and to invoke the powers of the National Media Commission to take punitive action against offending broadcasters. The stakeholders agreed that to achieve the objective, they would like to sign a memorandum of cooperation to formalize arrangements among them. Key to the arrangements is the setting up of a committee under Section 10 of the National Media Commission Act, Act 449 of 1993. Mr. Speaker, consequently, on the 15th of June 2021, stakeholders including the following signed up onto the Memorandum of Cooperation to address unethical broadcast content: the National Media Commission, the National Communications Authority, the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, the Ghana Journalists Association, civil society organizations including the Media Foundation for West Africa, the Bank of Ghana, National Cyber Security Center, the National Security Secretariat, the Ghana Police Service, the Ghana Armed Forces, the National Film Authority, the Local Government Service, and the Gaming Commission. The stakeholders agreed that they will cooperate closely and consult each other on matters of mutual interest to achieve their common objective, which include the following: monitoring the broadcast landscape to identify and examine complaints of unethical broadcast content, which includes but is not limited to content offensive to national security, public order, public morality, as well as against the reputation, rights, and freedoms of others. Provide an early warning system for flagging such unethical broadcast content, and recommend appropriate remedies. Mr. Speaker, I'm informed by the National Media Commission that they are comfortable with the Memorandum of Cooperation and will employ it vigorously moving forward. The third thing, Mr. Speaker, is a broadcasting bill. In line with Article 164 of the 1992 Constitution, the Ministry commenced the process of drafting a new broadcasting bill in consultation with the players in the industry. Among other things, the bill is seeking to introduce broadcasting standards to ensure that there's decorum on our airwaves. Consequently, the Ministry resumed engagements with stakeholders with the view to solicit their input into the drafting of the new bill. Mr. Speaker, so far, only the following stakeholder organizations have responded to calls to submit input into the broadcasting bill: the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, the Bank of Ghana, the Gaming Commission, Facebook, Mr. Speaker, and a private organization, Sewonu and Co-Associates. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the following stakeholders, though we directly requested input from them, have not submitted input and did not submit input as at the time we were closing the receipt of inputs for internal preparation. We still look forward to receiving their inputs though. This includes the Ghana Journalists Association, UNESCO Ghana Commission, the Media Foundation for West Africa, the National Cyber Security Center, the National Security Secretariat, the National Film Authority, civil society organizations like CDD Ghana, the Communication Educators Association of Ghana. Nonetheless, Mr. Speaker, we have analyzed the input we've received so far, and we have commenced work with the Attorney General to assist in drafting the new bill. Part of the bill requires some closer collaboration between the National Communication Authority and the National Media Commission on matters of content propriety, and we're in the process of completing that engagement as the Attorney General's Department works with us. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, while we trust that this House will pass a broadcasting bill when it's presented, we urge the stakeholders who have signed onto the Memorandum of Cooperation to act within the current legal mandate to ensure that we enjoy the decorum on our airwaves that we all desire. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. Let me give you one supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, beyond the insanity that he has really done some goodness to, almost every MP in this room has a Facebook or Instagram account that doesn't belong to him. By so saying, I am trying to impugn that most of us, our accounts have been cloned or some fraudsters have taken over using our names to defraud people outside. What is the ministry doing to announce to the public that they shouldn't pay heed to such fraudsters and be careful?
Yes, Minister.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, the task of ensuring that public officers or members of government, including members of parliament, are operating with verified social media accounts is a task that falls squarely at the doorstep of the Ministry of Communications. It is not something that will fall at our doorstep as a ministry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Leader, hold on. Let me give the opportunity to Honorable Member for Boko Central Affairs.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to. The Minister has outlined several measures aimed at dealing with the content. I want to find out from the media, from the Minister, whether he has considered the option of ensuring that media houses employ certified personnel to run programs, given that in all the other professions, law, medicine, every other profession, people go through a program and get certified to participate in the industry. We know that for the media also, you have Institute of Journalism, you have degree programs. Are you considering ensuring that actors, employees of media houses have the requisite certification before they go on air?
Thank you very much. Yes, Honorable Minister.
Honorable Speaker, I thank my colleague, the former Information Minister, for his question. Mr. Speaker, it will raise another question of what certification are we talking about? Is this certification for journalism or for public relations? Mr. Speaker, the practice of journalism falls under the bigger umbrella of freedom of expression. And therefore, it will be difficult to even seek to legislate that if a person is not certified, he cannot practice journalism. Mr. Speaker, also today, journalism has even grown to the extent where we have citizen journalists. So what will this... Mr. Speaker, today journalism is also extended to the level where we have citizen journalists.
So would the advocacy for journalists to be certified also extend to citizen journalists? These are the considerations for which it will be very difficult to seek to legislate that a person be certified before he or she practices journalism. Because journalism falls under the big umbrella of freedom of expression, and today, as it grows, various persons can practice it even when they have not been trained as journalists. Mr. Speaker, I practiced journalism for close to a decade. I never went to school as a journalist. But what worked for me and what has worked for many other persons who never even studied journalism is rather the on-the-job training, is the opportunity to have training and support while you are on the job. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, what we did from the policy level was to bring all the stakeholders together to ask, how can you put together some training that we can help mobilize support for? And it is this that we are operating through the Media Capacity Enhancement Program. So, Mr. Speaker, we will not subscribe to a certification of journalists. We subscribe to a view that says, let the stakeholders in the industry themselves identify the capacity gaps, design curriculum to close those gaps, and let the broader society help to fund participants for that training. And that's exactly what we are doing in the Media Capacity Enhancement Program. As I mentioned, already 58 persons have gone through it. By the end of this year, we expect that 250 practicing journalists would have benefited from this program. Mr. Speaker, it's also important to mention that this training is not run by the Ministry of Information as was initially put in the public domain. The job of the Ministry of Information has been to provide policy leadership in this space and funding, and try to mobilize funding to support this training program that was designed and is being implemented by the independent working group of stakeholders in the industry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable A.B. Efuseni, I'm giving you the opportunity on condition that today you will not give us proverb.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure that Mr. Speaker himself, when the landlord has spoken, you don't ask the tenant for confirmation. But, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to compliment the Honourable Minister's assertion in respect of the Media Capacity Enhancement Program. Given the inadequacies in the media, and especially dealing with the issue of content, Mr. Speaker, it's a multifaceted problem. From the infiltration of the profession with quacks and people who are so commercially minded that content doesn't matter. But sensationalism has become a key part of the media practice, where attention is drawn to the bid to make profits rather than to deal with content that is sanitized. And so one of the areas that is very of crucial importance to the enhancements of the skills of media people is a program that the minister has outlined. But Mr. Speaker, the minister himself will be the first to bear with me that when your security man himself needs security, you the landlord, your life is hanging on a thread. He himself will agree that the Ministry of Information is among the least funded in terms of budgetary allocation. So they have a paucity of resources at their disposal.
Honorable, your question, you've not even given your question, but you've already given me two proverbs. So the question now.
So, Mr. Speaker, I was just going to ask the minister, in view of the paucity of resources available to him and others, how does he hope to be able to overcome the problem of enhanced training for media persons? Because, like I said, Mr. Speaker, a lot of journalists come onto the discipline without any secure knowledge of the profession they are practicing in. And I say this as somebody who has been in the media for almost 3 decades, that I have that experience of encountering so many journalists who completely are bereft of any knowledge of the profession they are in, and even the very basic ethics that inform the profession. And so, Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Minister has hit the nail right on the head. But the issue then boils down to resources. How is he going to link up? Because government's rating of the information ministry and information disseminating sector is low. It's not giving that priority. so that resources can go into that sector for them to undertake the program that he's saying. So I'm asking you, what does he envisage will be some of those issues that will help him to get the resources to carry out the mandate that we have conferred on him? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I was following the Honorable APF Seni and ranking member for your committee on communication very well. But Mr. Speaker, at a point I lost the because I want you to point it to what a question should not be of excessive length. So I want to know the actual question. The rules does not say that a question should not be of excessive length. But the question is too long that I even fail to follow.
Honourable Minister, may you respectfully respond to ABF?
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, we are mobilizing resources from multilateral agencies, development partners, and even the private sector to complement our meager resources, which we have made available to the Independent Working Committee on this program. May I use this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, and your dispatch box to also reiterate the call to all the stakeholder groups that speak every now and then about the need to improve the quality of work in the media. Now let's put our money where our mouth is. And so to our colleagues in the multilateral agencies, the development partners, and private sector, the work of the media helps all of us and also affects all of us if not done well. Let's support their training. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, yes, let me come to leader. And once I call leader, it means...
Mr. Speaker, Minister, my will be to help you to succeed and for the country to succeed. Mr. Speaker, I'm looking at the minister's answer, and with respect, let me refer you to page 33. Page 33. And Mr. Speaker, I beg your leave because the minister will have to note some issues before you. Now, when you say you are drafting a new broadcasting bill, Mr. Speaker, I'm aware that far back 2012, I had signed onto a broadcasting bill which I forwarded to then Minister for Information for his signature for us to jointly get cabinet approval for a broadcasting bill. Now, I also note further in page 33, this 2012, and Ministry of Information is Ministry of Information, 2012, I signed as then Minister for Communication on a drafting, on a broadcasting bill, which thoroughly was discussed with the guidance of Professor Karkari and Co. So when you say new, then Mr. Speaker, my concern to the question, when you list your stakeholders, Ghana Independent Broadcasting Association, Bank of Ghana, Gaming Commission, conspicuously lost is the National Media Commission and the National Communications Authority. Yet they remain the source of the conflict and the source of the delay, Mr. Speaker. And just, Minister, to help you, the NCA grants frequencies. That is technical. When they grant the licenses and people are conversing using it, it moves outside technical content to the National Media Commission. And Mr. Speaker, lucky. We are all here. Bring the bill and we'll pass it into law for you. It's the two institutions who are holding this country to ransom. NMC and National Media Commission, who is in charge. But Mr. Speaker, I want to find out from the minister whether government has any intentions to regulate social media since it has become a toxic source of misinformation. Thank you.
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the leader for his questions. First, I'll deal with the first comment of a new broadcasting bill. and his later remarks actually answer my question for me. Yes, indeed, I inherited a draft, or I inherited a bill. That is a matter of fact, and I think when I appeared before this House for my vetting, I confirmed that. But, Mr. Speaker, that bill has been overtaken by time because of some of the issues that leader raised even in the end. For example, when you say broadcasting, would it now include online streaming and online broadcasting? And will the same rules that you seek to enforce on a free-to-air or a digital television station apply to somebody who broadcasts on YouTube or Facebook? Will the same sanctions apply? Mr. Speaker, there's, for example, another issue that we've been contending with. When you put in place sanctions against broadcasters who allow third-party contributors, like serial callers, to get onto their platforms, or let's say like callers, to get onto their platforms and make comments which ordinarily will fly in the face of ethical or allowable journalism, would you require of social media platform operators the same responsibility to moderate that content, or would you enforce the same sanctions on them? So, Mr. Speaker, there have been a number of new issues that have emerged since 2012, as my colleague, the minority leader, raises. It is for this reason that we've gone back to the drawing board, because media regulation is very tricky. If you don't take care, you would overstep the bounds of free expression. So it's for this reason that we've gone back to the drawing board to engage all the stakeholders to weigh in on what we called emerging issues. Indeed, when we sent the memo to them outlining all of these issues, we described them as emerging issues and asked them to give us their views on these emerging issues. And our expectation is that we'll be able to bring to this House, and that is where I use the word, a new bill, which not only deals with the issues that were raised in the previous bill, but responds to these new emerging issues, some of which I have outlined here. Mr. Speaker, secondly, I want to speak to the issue that leader raised, that he was of the view that the National Communication Authority and the National Media Commission were missing in the list of stakeholders. I want to draw leaders' attention. I mentioned that a number of stakeholders had responded and some had not. Those who had responded included the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, the Bank of Ghana, Gaming Commission, Facebook, and so on and associates. Those who have not responded, regrettably, Mr. Speaker, includes some of the ones that he referred to. Now, Mr. Speaker, further, my answer goes on to say that part of the bill deals with content regulation, which requires some agreement between the National Communication Authority and the National Media Commission. And we're in the process of ensuring that we are able to get that agreement between them. Because, for instance, Mr. Speaker, like leader rightly shared, the NCA will give frequency authorization, but the NCA has limited power to determine whether or not content is ethical. And the law must respond to that. And these are some of the parts that we're trying to fine-tune before we come to this House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for tolerating me. Minister, in your answer in page 33, you also talk about the broadcaster bill to deal with standards of broadcasting. Mr. Speaker, it is the expectation of the Ghanaian public that you would use the broadcaster bill to define the parameters of broadcasting in Ghana between who is a state broadcaster, is it GBC, who is a public broadcaster, who is a commercial broadcaster, and who is a community broadcaster. Will your draft bill work on these parameters? Thank you.
The answer to that, Mr. Speaker, is yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. We move to question 1197. Question 1197. And the question stands in the name of a member for Kita, Honorable Kwame. Joduli Gapi. Honorable, let's hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask the Minister for Information. What circumstances led to Ghana Broadcasting Corporation losing the right to continue with the live broadcast of National Lottery Authority draw every Monday to Saturday from 7:15 p.m. to 7:30 p.m.
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. Article 167C of the Constitution 1992 mandates the National Media Commission to insulate the state-owned media from government control. Indeed, this provision estops me as Minister for Information from being involved in the operational activities of GBC, such as is the subject matter of this question. But, Mr. Speaker, out of the abundance of respect for this House and my colleague who has the question, we contacted GBC for answers, and our findings are as follows. Mr. Speaker, the contract that he refers to was originally signed to have a duration from the 1st of March 2021 to the 28th of February 2022. Clauses 15.0 and 11.1a of the contract read as follows. Termination. Either party may terminate this contract in the following way. A. By giving the other party at least 3 months written notice of its intention to do so. Pursuant to this, Mr. Speaker, on the 24th of August 2021, the National Lottery Authority notified GBC and terminated the contract after 3 months. Mr. Speaker, I am advised by the Office of the Director General of GBC that there are no outstanding financial obligations after the termination of this contract. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Member, should I give you one supplementary question? Honorable members, we are taking so much time. Okay, let's hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Article 166 of the Constitution. Article 166 C and D, and I quote, 2 persons appointed by the President and 3 persons nominated by Parliament should be a member of National Media Commission. I would like to find out from the Minister, is he a member of the National Media Commission? If it is, has this issue come to his attention?
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Minister is not a member of the National Media Commission. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Let me give you your last lot.
Mr. Speaker, the GBC have been operating and then live broadcast, and all of a sudden they have terminated the contract. We wanted to know the reason why termination, because the award of the contract was given to a private media, which frequency the coverage is very, very small. UTV, where GBC is a government institution. That is the reason why we are seeking answers to this. It's a state institution. These have been, when it comes to frequency in terms of coverage, it's nationwide. But have been terminated, the contract have been terminated and awarded to a private company, which is UTV. That is the reason why we are asking this question.
Honorable Minister, are you minded to answer the question? Come again. Honorable Member, the Minister did not get the question.
In answering the question, the Minister made mention about termination of the contract. I wanted to know the reasons that warrant the termination, because since in time memorial, is a national television have been broadcasting this live.
Very well.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, the client is the one that terminated the contract in accordance with the contract. In the letter of termination, a copy of which has been given to me by the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, a reason was not stated. Mr. Speaker, I will therefore struggle to imagine the reason for which the client terminated the contract. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes,
Mr. Speaker, the minister is making reference to a termination letter from Ghana Broadcasting. We will want to know who signed it, what date, and the content of it. Then we can do follow-up to appreciate what informed the decision for termination. You just pass on as a reference. That is not sufficient for our record, Mr. Speaker. In answering the member's question, we want to see what is in the letter.
Yes, Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my colleague's question was asking of the reason for termination. And that's why, Leader, I responded that the letter, as I have cited, did not provide a reason. It said that in accordance with the clauses of the contract that allowed termination on notice, they were invoking that clause. Mr. Speaker, this is a House of Record. I am happy to make available to the House a copy of the letter as I have it here, and a copy of the contract as well.
Very
Thank
well.
you, Mr. Speaker.
We move, Honorable Minister, on behalf of the House, I would like to thank you very much for attending upon the House to answer questions from members. We thank you and we wish you well in all your endeavors. In all your endeavors, you are hereby discharged. Yes. Honorable Deputy Minister, you are welcome to the House. Honorable Member for Okaiko Central, what is your beef? Yes, Honorable Member for, Honorable Minister for Fisheries, Aquaculture Development, may you take your rightful seat, please. Thank you very much. Let me invite Honorable Member for Qatar once again on question 420. Question 420. Honorable Member, the Minister is here waiting for this question too. So may I ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, once again for the opportunity. I rise to ask the Minister for Fisheries and Aquaculture Development the step being taken by the Ministry to mechanize premise fuel supply across the country.
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Ministry is currently working with National Authority and Public Procurement Authority to fully implement the automated premise fuel dispensing outlets across the country to enhance service delivery and safety. The Fisheries Commission will continue with canoe identification registration, which will be tied to the premise fuel distribution to ensure that only persons with registered canoes have access to the premise fuel. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Honorable Member for Qatar, any supplementary question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to find out from the Minister any timeline with regards to the automation.
Minister, any timelines?
Mr. Speaker, the process is ongoing and very soon. By the month of August. By the month of August, yes, please. Thank you.
So we turn to question. Honorable members, this honorable member, I've already mentioned the next question. So so we move to question 421. Question 421. You also want to ask question? Okay, then let him give it to honorable member for Bongo first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In your answer of PA to automate most of the landing bridges, what is the role of Ghana Standards Authority in this?
Minister, I haven't called you. I'm not even admitting this question.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, in any case, no. Mr. Speaker, in any case, it is not possible to work with MPA without working with Ghana Standards Authority. It's not possible because it's about measurement.
My brother,
and she has not mentioned Ghana Standards Authority in this.
Just file a proper, substantive question.
Yes. It's about automation.
Yes.
Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. Speaker, I wish to find out from my colleague, my dear minister, prior to taking office, the distribution of permits has been a huge challenge in the country. Distribution, emphasis my distribution of permits prior to assumption of office. I will want to find out from minister if, after this fleeting period of being in office, she's put in place measures to deal specifically with the distribution challenge of permits.
Yes, Honorable Minister. If only you are minded to answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have taken many measures, and one is the tracking device that we put on the vehicles that transport the premise fuel to the landing beaches. We've also made sure that any landing beach that does diversion or hoarding, we do their supply for some time, and that is the punishment we give them. So we are on track, and very soon it will all end. The distribution will become perfect. Will be perfect when we automate it finally. Thank you.
Okay, let me go.
Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. Speaker, indeed, let me commend the Minister for Fisheries for her initiatives. I want to propose to her that in rolling out the program that she's just briefed the House about, she should consider piloting the scheme so that when there are teething problems, they'll be able to factor those in the main rollout. And in piloting, she should remember Germany. I thank you.
You see, is this a question? This is not a question. He's just advertising for support. Let's move to question 421. Question 421. Honorable Member for Pro East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask the Minister for Fisheries and Aquaculture Development the steps the ministry is taking to end the perennial shortage of premix fuel in Pro East, particularly Yeji.
Yes, Honorable Minister, another premise question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Allocations of the premise fuel to landing beaches of the various fishing communities is based on the number of motorized canoes and fishing activities. Though the premise fuel is allocated for fishing, Yeji as a transport community uses part of our premise fuel for both fishing and transportation. The ministry acknowledges that since March 2022, premise fuel supply has been irregular. However, the ministry is working closely with relevant stakeholders to ensure that available quantities of premise fuel are equitably distributed to landing beaches to mitigate the impact of the shortage experienced. Thank you.
Yes, honorable member. Honorable member, your microphone.
Right, Honorable Speaker, the Minister in her answer mentioned motorized canoes. Are motorized canoes used for only fishing? Since the Minister's answer clearly identifies two user groups, motorized canoes, canoe users, and fishing activities. There are two groups mentioned in the answer. I just want to ask the Minister whether there is provision for motorized canoes that enhance the value of fishing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, honorable minister.
Mr. Speaker, if I understood his question very well, the motorized canoes are those that use the outboard motors, and they are those that we give the premise fuel for their usage. But we've also realized that these tricycles and then Pragia, there are so many in the Yeji community, and they also use the same fuel for their motors. And that is why we said that when you read the last answer, we say we are going to make sure that all the canoes are given identification card. And with this identification card or identification number, that will be able to streamline those who are supposed to have the premise fuel, but not to those using Pragia and the tricycles. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My second follow-up question. The Minister talked about registration of canoes. May I know from the Minister which organization has responsibility for the registration of canoes and under which law that are they registering these canoes?
Yes, honorable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Fisheries Commission is responsible for the canoe registration, and it is in the law of the Fisheries Commission that gives them that allows them to do the registration.
Honorable, I haven't called you. You've done your two supplementary questions.
Sorry, Mr.
You've done two supplementary questions, and that is enough. So you move to question 544. Question 544. And the question stands in your name again. But I guess that this question has already been answered. You ask the question. Because I'm getting the inclination that... No, go to your substantive question 544.
I rise to ask the Minister for Fisheries and Aquaculture Development the measures the ministry is putting in place to streamline premix distribution to benefit fishermen on the Volta Lake.
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As part of measures to streamline premix fuel allocation, allocation is based on the number of canoes, and level of fishing. In addition, electronic vehicle tracking system is being implemented by the National Premix Fuel Secretariat in collaboration with the National Petroleum Authority that enables regulators to strictly monitor suppliers to designated landing beaches, including communities along the Volta Lake. There is also intermittent updates of canoe record through canoe frame service. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, does the National Premix Fuel Secretariat have the capacity to implement a tracking system, or they are going to ride on the back of the National Petroleum Authority that already has a tracking system?
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry and the Secretariat, we are in collaboration with NPA for the tracking of the vehicles and the automation that we are about to do. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Member, your last supplementary question for question 544.
Mr. Speaker, I asked this question because tracking comes with a legal liability. And as we speak, the law only allows NPA, and they have a legislative instrument to back this, to do the tracking of fuel vehicles that we call bulk road vehicles. And therefore, if the minister says the Premix Secretariat or the ministry is going to do it, Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the minister to reconsider. They can write on the back of the MPA that has the legal mandate. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, would the minister consider taking a second look at her answer and put the onus on the MPA that has the legal framework and also has the platform to do that? Thank you, Mr.
Honorable Member, I think the minister will agree to do that in collaboration with NPA. Let's move to question 969. The minister will do that in collaboration with NPA. Yes, Honorable, do you want to ask a question? Yes, let's hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to know from the minister whether they have plans to help the fisher folks from the island communities, the fisher folks on the island communities who, by the time they arrived at the municipality, premix is run out. Do you have any plans to help those on the island communities?
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, currently we don't know the number of canoes that exist along the fishing communities. And that is why we say we are doing canoe survey to know the number of canoes that we have. And this will also help us to know the quantum of premix fuel that should be taken to a community. And so the communities around a particular landing beach will all be included. And so we'll include them and they'll all have access to the premix fuel when we do the automation. Thank you.
Very well. We will now move to question 969. Question 969. And the question stands in your name again. Honorable Member for Pro East. Let's hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask the Minister for Fisheries and Aquaculture Development what efforts are in place to ensure adequate supply of premise fuel to riverine fishermen on the Volta Lake, particularly in the Pro East District.
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In addition to my earlier submission on how we are ensuring adequate supply of premise fuel, I must indicate that canoe identification and registration, which has been implemented in the marine sector, will be extended to the inland sector. The data will help in improving equitable distribution of premise fuel to the inland sector. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Member, before you ask your supplementary question, please indulge me to extend sitting beyond the normal sitting hours. It's 2 o'clock, and kindly indulge me to sit beyond it. So, Honorable Kwabra, you may ask your supplementary question.
Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister talked about canoe registration in her answer. Will the Honorable Minister confirm, or is the Honorable Minister aware that Ghana Maritime Authority have a register of canoes on the Volta Lake, and that as the regulatory body of maritime activities on the Volta Lake, they have this register?
Yes, Honorable Minister, are you aware?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yes, I'm aware. But the Fisheries Commission is also mandated to have access or number of canoes on our waters because they work directly with the canoe fishermen. Thank you.
Honorable Kwabra, your last supplementary question.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. In the Minister's answer, the Minister confirms that there is a register of canoes on the Volta Lake by the Ghana Maritime Authority. Having confirmed that there's a register, will the Minister tell us the quantum of petroleum products, especially premix, that we need in the economy to meet the demands of the artisanal fishing industry? And if the number is available, are we meeting the quantum?
Honorable Member, please file a substantive question. Honorable Member, please file a substantive question.
Right, Honorable Speaker, let me rephrase.
I'm not giving you the opportunity to rephrase it. The minister sitting here will not know the quantum if we have not already asked her to prepare for that. So, Honorable Member for Southern, let me hear you.
Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. Available leader, give your backbench members the opportunity to. Speaker, thank you. Speaker, in further answer to the House, I did hear the minister say that they are in the process of registering the number of canoes in the various communities along the lake. I want to find out from her whether some community education is going on, because if the team comes to, for instance, South Dine, and there are several communities in addition to Germany and Tongo, and they are not aware, their canoes may not be captured. So we need to send a team around to do the sensitization so that those who are not in the main towns can also have their canoes registered. Because I suspect that when your canoe is not registered, you may not be able to access and purchase premise fuel going forward. So if you consider doing that, thank you.
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the registration started somewhere last year, and we've had this sensitization with the fishermen. And as you rightly mentioned, last year, around December, we made it known to the fishermen. And even just a few days ago, we've also sent them notification that every canoe must be registered. And when you are registered, your canoe identification number should be embossed on your canoe, so that whenever we come around, we know that this canoe belongs to this person, and the numbers will be synchronized with the card. So we are going to use the same card in drawing the premise fuel. So we have done the sensitization and it's ongoing. Thank you.
The last question. Afajatu.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Madam Minister, will you consider Peve Tonu for your pilot program? It's as if Peki is always taking everything. So please, will you consider Peve Tonu landing beach for your pilot program, please? Don't ignore.
Very well. Saudai, what was your beef?
Mr. Speaker, I heard them say that we are always taking the opportunity and minus perfect on. Wow.
Yes, Minister, let's hear you. Can you respond to Afajatu?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. We will have the discussion. But I promise you that we can consider. Thank you.
Very well. Honorable Minister, on behalf of the House, let me thank you very much for attending upon the House to answer questions from members. We thank you very much, and you are hereby discharged. Yes, Leader.
Speaker. Speaker, I guess we are ready for item 27 on page 20. Page 20, item 27, Speaker.
Honorable members, it means we are entering into public business. So at the commencement of public business, let's turn to page 20, item listed 27. Page 20, item listed 27. Ghana Hydrological Authority Bill 2021. Continuation of the consideration stage. Yes, the chairman of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Am I ready?
Mr. Speaker, the committee, in clause 27, proposes the addition of the following after paragraph D. Undertake projects in pursuance of the objects of the authority. Also move. Thank you.
Honourable members, the chairman has proposed an amendment. It is now before the House for consideration. Yes, member for Bodi, but before then, I'll see the seat to the first deputy speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion.
Honorable Chairman. Honorable Chairman. Yes.
The Speaker, I've already moved for the amendment, clause 27, and the committee proposes the addition of the following: undertake projects in pursuance of the objects of the authority. And I saw my committee member on his feet. Honorable Thank you.
Very well. So we are continuing with the consideration of the Ghana Hydrological Authority bill. Is that right? Yes. Very well. So item 1, amendment proposed by the chairman of the committee.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, as I said, clause 27. Yes, the committee thought it wise to include the following after paragraph D, that undertake projects in pursuance of objects of the authority. As you move, thank you.
Honourable members, for the consideration of the House. All in favour of the proposed amendment say aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. Now put a question on clause 20. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, before you put a question on the whole of clause 27, in view of the current amendment and clause 1(2), I propose that clause 27D be deleted. It reads, developed and maintain any property vested in or owned by the authority.
Hey, did you say 27B?
D.
D. Okay. D. Develop and maintain any property vested in or owned by the authority.
Yes.
And why do you say
I said so because if you look at clause 1(2), say for the performance of the functions of the authority may acquire and hold property, dispose of property, and enter into a contract or any other related transaction. That is a function of the authority.
Yes, Chairman. What's your...
Mr. Speaker, I have no objection to that. They can delete it. Thank you.
Very well. So, honourable members, the proposed amendment is to delete D. Yes, Honourable Deputy Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I've looked at the new rendition the chairman has moved to undertake projects in pursuance of the objects of the authority. Is that the
that has been moved, and now he's moving another amendment. So,
can I hear you?
His amendment is that we delete D. Let's deal with that, and then we will move. Yes.
Speaker, yet the further amendment being proposed is to delete D, but we need to take first of all the question on the chairman's proposed amendment.
We have done that already. I was going to put a question on the entire 27 when he proposed this one. So.
It is superfluous.
Very well. So the question is, before we remove
before you put the question, another amendment, that is 27F.
We have not moved 27D yet.
Very well.
Your amendment that we should delete 27D,
Yeah.
it has not been moved yet.
Very well. Very well.
So I'll put the question. And the question is that all in favor of deleting 27D, clause 27, subclause D, all in favor of the proposed amendment, say aye. All against that say no. The ayes have it, the amendment is carried. Now, yes, you may move your further amendment.
Then, Mr. Speaker, propose amendment to 27F. It reads, the current rendition reads, engage in any purpose in connection with the functions of the authority as the board, in consultation with the minister, shall determine. Mr. Speaker, it should be engaged in any other activity ancillary to the functions of the authority. So we delete the word purpose in connection with, and then we insert activities ancillary to the functions of the authority as the board in consultation with the minister shall determine. Mr. Speaker, I so move.
Yes, Chairman. You have no objection to that, right? All in favor of the proposed amendment say aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. Now I'll put the question on the entire clause 27. And the question is, clause 27, as variously amended, shall stand part of the bill. All in favor say aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. Clause 27, as variously amended, is ordered to stand part of the bill. Clause 28.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, in the opening phrase,
Can we wait for it to be called?
Okay.
Clause 28.
Thank you,
Table
Mr.
office, clause 28.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Sources of money for the fund.
Very well. Okay. Amendment proposed. Chairman.
Yes. 28, in the opening phrase, we should delete money and insert monies. Thank you.
All in favor of the proposed amendment say aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. Item III. Yes, Chairman.
Yes. Still in clause 28, we should add the following new paragraph after C. That is, a levy that may be imposed by Parliament on hydrological services. As we move. Thank you.
All in favor? Yes, Honorable.
Speaker, I'm in support of the amendment being proposed. But instead of a levy, you could simply say levies. Levies that may be imposed by Parliament on hydrological services.
I think the new rendition is to leave legislation in the single, not in the plural. That has been the style adopted by Parliament.
Speaker, I thank you for the guidance, but I'm using levies in the sense that the rates that we may charge in the future may be different. It may be different on the services. It may not be a single levy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, your committee looked at it and we thought that a levy imposed by Parliament on any hydrological services. So the rendition a levy is enough for this addition. And so we should maintain our proposal, the chairman's proposal, as a levy that may be imposed by Parliament.
Mr. Speaker, I have a difficulty with the amendment, even clause 28E. The development levy, we are passing through the back door to earmark. Therefore, we need to hear from the policy promoters of this bill. When you say a development levy approved by Parliament on drainage and flood related and coastal development projects, what levy? You see, if you are establishing a hydrological fund, you want the source of the money to be a development levy.
Just that, leader, you just go through. That's why we are deleting those aspects. Those provisions have been deleted in view of the corrections we have made in C. So what you are talking about becomes irrelevant in view of the corrections we have made in C. Yes. Now, 28. We are also further saying that E and F should be deleted. Yes, that's the point. So, yeah.
Very well. So
yes,
I'll put the question. Aye. All in favor of the proposed amendment say aye. All against say no. The amendment is carried. Item IV.
Say the speaker. So we are now deleting paragraphs E and F. Thank you.
All in favor of the proposed amendment say aye. I did not hear a voice vote. I'll put the question again. All in favor of the proposed amendment say aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. Now I'll put the question on the entire clause 28. Yes, leader.
Mr. Speaker, just to get guidance, 28D, I know is traditionally, we have always said grants, donations, and gifts. What's the difference between donation and a gift? And why are we repeating the same words of donation and gifts? I think so. No. It is not elegant. Mr. Speaker, gifts come in the form of donations. And even the culture of gifts, Mr. Speaker, I think that as a parliament, we should discourage gifts being given to public institutions. That is what is enabling corruption. Yes, gift. Why gift? Why do you want a public institution to depend upon a gift? And Mr. Speaker, you know, even in practice, the rules that gifts are supposed to be subjected to under the Constitution and the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice law, we all don't respect it. He takes the gift, it's not reported, it's not registered, it is enabling corruption. So Parliament should stop encouraging public institutions depending on gifts as source of their funds. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I think I would support what the leader has said. We don't have to formalize it in this context. So it becomes abusive. It can be abused at any point in time. So, but that has been the practice. If we now need a new rendition for gift, fine. But it has been the practice. But I support your argument. I think it's logical that we don't have to formalize gifts in legislation. So I think if we can do something about it, but is it a practice? Fine. If you take it off, I don't mind as a chairman, as he said. But it's always subject to abuse. So if you can take it out, fine. It doesn't really offend the entire bill. So I'll support his argument. It makes sense. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this one. I disagree with my chairman. I mean, all the bills that we pass, monies to the authority is either through grants, gifts, and so on. Yes, minority leader will be right that we can, taking gifts will be one way or the other, corrupting people. But that is what we have in almost all the laws. And so it is just the drafting, making it elegant, drafting of our laws in this house. Unless this house has come to say that, well, there should not be any gifts to any state institution, it should be left with only grant. Now, no state institution to receive any gift again. Then that one, we all agree that it's something that we've agreed on and should not be in our laws again. But as far as we have it in our other laws, then, Mr. Speaker, let's go with whatever is in the other laws as well. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, this Parliament is a living institution. It's dynamic. If If over the years, gift has been abused, it's not serving our purpose. This is parliament for you. You can defend the relevant change. This is parliament for you. You're making laws. So if over the years, gift has not helped this country, and we want to talk about gifts in our legislation, this is a time to effect a change. Because it's a dynamic institution. This is a dynamic institution. We can change at any point in time to reflect changing needs. For me, gift over the years has been abused in this country. Corruption, everything has its roots embedded in gifts. The person gives a gift today, tomorrow he expects something. So me, as MP, wherever I travel, I told my constituency, whatever they give me, I reject it. Whatever, yam, what is it, plantain and those things. I say, no, please keep it. So for me, I don't think we should be encouraging gifts in our context. Since it's been abused over the years, it's not helping our cause. So that's why I agree with the leader of the minority that we can begin to have a discussion on gifts. That is it. Let's have a discussion on gifts because it's also helping our cause. Thank you.
Honourable members, we're talking about institutions here. If I own an excavator and I see that this hydrological authority needs an excavator and I make a deed of gift to the authority, I think because the law does not require us to accept gifts, so they can take it, or if a contracting company, let's say an international firm has worked in the country for a while, is finished and decides that its equipment, it does not want to re-export it, it wants to donate it to the hydrological institutes. Can it not take it? If a big contractor in his will decides that all the equipment of his company should be donated to a gift to the hydrological authority, it cannot receive.
Mr. Speaker, let me situate your example in the context of the fight against galamsey. You know, in the past, you used to see these excavators, you see them put out at assemblies, all of them later found themselves at galamsey sites. Yes, you go and see them. So when people present the gift to the assemblies as excavators, for realize they are all on galamsey sites damaging the environment. So it happened, and that is why these days when they see them, they have to bend them.
Honourable, did we ever make a formal gift to any of the assemblies? I'm not aware. The assemblies only held them on behalf of
some were donations, gifts.
But they were never formally given to any assembly. Yes, Honourable.
Speaker, thank you. Speaker, I agree with leader that we can do away with either gifts or donations. I think his problem is the use of the two. And then he lays his submission with not we should really encourage this in our legislation. But we speak of institutions that sometimes make appeal to international agencies. And mind you, we are in the season where often, as soon as there are downpours, our neighborhoods get flooded. And we are crying that the central government is unable to assist or is inadequacies in terms of funding. So other multilateral agencies and embassies should. So embassies can assist. And they have to do so by donations. So I agree that we can define, except from the interpretation clause, that we haven't defined donations. So we can define donation to include gifts. Then we delete one, so that we can make progress in the matter. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, mine was just to provoke a policy debate on this subject, so that, Mr. Speaker, going forward, this Parliament may have to take a real look at encouraging. Mr. Speaker, I'll share a brilliant article by Olusegun Obasanjo. He's done a very good paper on distinguishing between gift in the African sense and cultural sense of a gift, and gift which is likely to engender corruption. But I think that going forward, this House should not encourage public institutions to be accepting gifts. It is enabling corruption And that is undermining integrity of our public institutions. In fact, in that article, Obasanjo argues that a true gift is usually a token and that it is given in the open. Those other gifts that you give, a token. So I'll abandon it for you to put the question. But going forward, I think that Parliament must take a position on encouraging this gift going to public institutions. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. So what is the position that we delete gifts and retain donations? We should let it go as it is. Very well. So the question is clause 28 as variously amended shall stand part of the bill. All in favor say aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. Clause 28 as variously amended is ordered to stand part of the bill. Clause 29.
Management of the fund.
Honourable members, there's no advertised amendment to clause 29. Yes, leader.
Speaker, clause 29, 1, and I read. So I have to seek your leave and indulgence. I was still studying the bill to file my amendment. It reads, the board shall manage and administer the fund, which shall for the purpose include the Controller and Accountant General. Bad construction. Bad construction. 2, you cannot manage this fund with the Controller and Accountant General. No. You are setting up an independent fund. You have identified the sources of funding for this fund. The Controller can only help you open an account for the purpose of this fund. But the Controller has no role in the management of the fund. So, Mr. Speaker, the whole 29 has to be reconstructed. The board shall manage and administer the fund. Full stop. Let it just end there. The rest go. Then we will find a way for the Controller to advise them on an account being opened for the fund.
Subclause 3 actually is providing for the Controller.
Perfect, Mr. Speaker. So you've aided me. But the first part, administer the fund for which shall for this purpose include is Pembe English. I have to respect the people from Pembe. It looks more like Kulukul School English. So we have to just say that the board shall manage and administer the fund. Maybe we should even strengthen it. Best practice. They must manage this fund. Yes. We leave it there. The rest of the word should be deleted. If the chairman has no objection. Mr. Speaker, you've said the second part for me, so that subclause 3 will deal with my secondary concern. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, it's already stated that after the clause 3 deals with his concern, so it can be taken out. So it can end at the fund.
Very well. So the proposed amendment is to delete all the words after fund. Is that right?
Yes.
Honourable members, all in favor of the proposed amendment say aye. All against that say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. Now clause 29, yes.
Mr. Speaker, with your leave, I propose that clause 29(4), after reports, insert shall. So the new rendition will be section 24 and 25 on accounts and audits, and annual and other reports shall apply to the fund.
Okay, that's fine.
All in favor of the proposed amendment say aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. Now clause 29 as amended. Yes, leader.
Speaker, thank you for letting me catch your eye. Mr. Speaker, 29(2), 2A, formulate policies to generate money for the fund. Formulate policies to generate money for the fund. So if they formulate policies and it does not generate money, what happens? So, Mr. Speaker, you can talk about the board formulating policies for the management of the fund. Maybe you qualify it for the management of the fund, but not to generate money for the fund. We've already identified how monies will get into the fund. We didn't say monies generated by the fund. That's my first, Mr. Speaker. Then, Mr. Speaker, 2AB, determine the allocation to be made towards the objects of the fund. Bad English, bad construction. We simply are saying that the management of the fund shall be responsible for the allocation of monies from the fund.
All that come to 2-1, manage and administer the fund.
Yes, we can agree with you.
And so the whole 2, determine targets,
yes,
they are all not necessary.
I agree with you.
They all sum up to manage
achieving and to achieve the objects of the fund. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I think the whole of the 2 can be deleted. So, yes, Chairman, I think the whole of 29.2 is not necessary.
We are in agreement, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. So the amendment is that 29 sub 2 should be deleted. All in favor of the amendment say aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. Now clause 29.2 as amended shall stand part of the bill. All in favor say aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. Clause 30.
Investment of monies of the fund.
Yes, leader.
Mr. Speaker, again, with your leave and indulgence, clause 30, no advertised amendment, but may I seek your leave? Clause 30, line 1. The board may invest part of the fund as the board considers appropriate. The same board. Why are you repeating it 2 times? I have a difficulty with it. The board may invest part of the fund in securities that the minister responsible for finance may approve. But I don't like the winding language.
It appears that has become the trend now to be sure that if he uses it, sometimes it generates confusion as to whom the it is referring to. All right. So the board is used for certainty. Yes.
Because these days in drafting, the use of possessive pronoun is avoided. So in order to cure that mischief, you must, as a matter of necessity, repeat the subject matter. So in this case, the board must be repeated, not for emphasis per se, but to avoid. Other than that, you could say that the board may invest part of the fund as it deems appropriate, but to avoid the use of the word, the possessive, it deemed appropriate, it creates a problem when it comes to interpretation. So we no longer use the possessive pronoun again, so you must repeat as the board deems appropriate.
So, clause 30 shall stand part of the bill. All in favor say aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. Clause 30 shall stand part of. Are you on clause 30?
Mr. Speaker, that is so. To lend support to the issue that leader raised, even though the question has been put, I'm of the humble opinion that we could say the board may invest part of the fund as appropriate in securities that the minister responsible for finance may approve. Yes. Yes.
Sorry,
Well,
I
Speaker,
was distracted. Can
yes,
I hear you again?
Speaker, my humble position is that we can take away where leader find problematic. That phrase the board considers appropriate. And simply say that the board may invest part of the fund as appropriate in securities that the minister responsible for finance may approve.
What difference will it make? As appropriate and as the board considers appropriate. I think as it is, there's really no difference. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I was going to raise issue with the use of the word part of the fund. Part of the fund. It should just have been the board may make investment on behalf of the fund, but the use of the word part of the fund, I have difficulty with it, but I'm not a modern drafter. When you say part of the fund, you are simply saying that the board may make investment of the fund, but the word part of the fund does not appear to me an elegant way of dealing with it. Part of the fund.
You know, if the board decides that we are taking everything and investing it, and then you need part of the money for operational activities. So this is just to emphasize that you have to, looking at the circumstances, invest as appropriate.
Mr. Speaker, how do we by legislation determine that they are using part of the fund and not all? Because these are matters that are administrative. So yes, the legislation says you may invest, but it is prudent that you don't go and put everything in investment. You don't have to legislate over everything. All that we have to say is that you may use the fund to invest. Well, I think if we legislate on parts, how do we determine that? Why do we determine that they are actually using part and not all, sitting here? So let us give them the ability, the power to invest, and they'll use prudent management practices, not to invest all, but to leave some for operations and administration.
Yes, I don't remember for who.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, there's an objectives for the fund, and the objectives of the fund is to use the fund for certain things. And we are saying that you cannot use all the funds for that objective. Part of it should be in an investment. That is what the bill is seeking to do. So, for the use of the fund, you use part in an investment, and the others on the object of the bill or the fund. So we are just legislating that part of the money should be invested. Don't use all for the objective. Invest some in an investment for the authority.
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you. Because I think lawmaking is to cure all defects, cure every mischief. So the direction is clear. The law is clear. Give a direction. I don't use everything for investment or whatever it is, so that, as we said, they can be operational use on a daily basis that you need money. That's it. So lawmaking is to cure all the mischief, cure all the defects. So that is exactly what we seek to do with this provision. Go and get a crazy manager. He takes all the money, go and put an investment, one investment, and he lost up everything. So now there's a provision for you. There's a caveat that use part of it so that at point in time we can have money for other operational routine expenses. So I think it's in order. It's on point. Let us maintain it, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, law, they say, is a communicative action. So what action is this provision trying to communicate? What the provision is communicating is that the board can only use part of the money, but not all the money. So if the view of my learned friend is to the effect that how can we know whether part of the money is used or all the money is used in the investment? We need not be auditors
in order to make the law, communicating to the board what they are supposed to do. Now, once the law communicates what the board is supposed to do regarding investment, as to whether they use all the money or they really use part of the money, it's an issue of auditing. And the law is there to guide the auditors that you are not supposed to spend all the money in an investment. Why did you spend the money, all the money, on an investment? And the issue as to whether they spend all or they spend less would then be determined at that particular level. But at this particular stage, law being a communicative action, what we are communicating is that you cannot spend all the money in an investment.
Speaker, in fact, I like his rendition, and that is why they are running into more problems. 99.9% is part. If the board has 10 million Ghana cedis available to it to invest, and they should use part. If they leave 10 cedis in the account, that is part. So it is really not. So I think that we should just say that they can invest. They can invest so that they can use prudent management systems to determine how much to invest and how much to leave for operation. Because the nature of this provision doesn't tie their hands in using a chunk of the money to invest, which we want to avoid. Unless we want to place a certain ceiling, let's say no more than 50%, then you'll be curing the mischief you seek to cure. But if you put it this way, they can still use 95%, 99%, and they will still not infringe this provision.
I think I'll put the question. Whether you invest 99.9 or you invest 1%, it is part. You have satisfied the law. So, clause 30 shall stand part of the bill. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. Clause 31. Sorry, clause 30 is ordered to stand part of the bill. Clause 31.
Tax exemption.
There's no advertised amendment to clause 31. All in favor of clause 31 being a part of the bill, say aye. Yes.
In the face of the new exemptions bill that we are considering, I don't know if we want to place this provision in the law.
What is the new Exemptions Act? What does it say? Which particular one?
Speaker, we are introducing a new legal regime. Yes, we have, but that's Parliament. And the thinking is contemporaneous.
I was going to refer you to the part about anticipation.
Anticipation. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm guided.
Yes.
Yeah. I just want to find out from the chairman. I find it quite interesting when we make laws and appear to be granting tax waivers to entities in advance of whatever they are going to do. Parliament is not going to cease to exist as long as Ghana exists. If any entity requires tax exemption, they reasonably put together the reasons why they needed to be exempted, and we grant them. So why are we writing a law and saying that they will be exempt from tax on a particular investment? I don't understand it. What is special about them that they ought to be given their tax exemption in advance?
Mr. Speaker, this is a policy issue, so I don't think the chairman can provide ready answers. It's a policy issue. So please, let's leave it at that. It's a policy issue, please. Unless the executive decide otherwise.
If they are earning on their investment, why should they be exempted from tax? If they are, why should they be exempted from tax? Yes, the issue is why should they be exempted from tax on their earnings? Yes.
Mr. Speaker, The tax exemption is only on investment accruing, not the whole fund. Investment that you made on behalf of the board. That's the
income accruing from investments.
Yes, investment.
Why should it be exempted?
Investment, Mr. Speaker, it's not about the whole fund. Just that investment part.
Mr. Speaker, every entity invests in whatever it is, and you earn an income. You are required to pay tax on your income on your investment. So we are asking why this particular entity being exempted from paying tax on their investment. We are not. I mean, I don't see any special reason why they needed to be exempted from paying tax on income on their investment. Everybody else pays. I'm not sure Parliament gets exemption if they do investment. The income we get, I don't think we are exempt. Mr. Speaker, we need to be careful. You said policy. I don't see this as a policy. I think somebody just put this in there, and I'm saying that let's make laws that we can. If the Exemptions Act eventually says that we can do that, fine. But this one, I think, is making us. We are making a law to. No, it's not double taxation. No. Mr. Speaker, this will not amount to double taxation. It will not amount to double taxation in any way at all, Mr. Speaker. I think this clause doesn't even have a space in this particular act, Mr. Speaker.
Nobody has yet told me why they should not pay tax on the earnings on the investment. That's on the earnings, not the amount itself. They have invested. They have earned 20%. Why shouldn't they pay tax on the 20%? Yes.
Mr. Speaker, being curious about the issue being discussed, I tried to go into the memorandum that states the principles underpinning the bill. And at page 7, it said further, the fund is exempt from the payment of tax on income accruing from investment made by the board for the fund. That's clause 31. But the actual reason, the actual rationale underpinning is clearly missing even in the memorandum accompanying the bill. And now the sponsors are also not here to tell us why they want this exemption. So, Mr. Speaker, it's very difficult for us as parliamentarians to take decisions based on this particular clause. Because you go through the entire bill, the rationale, the reason for clause 31 of the bill is completely not there. So you don't know whether you should approve of the clause or you should call for its deletion. I believe this is a matter for which the sponsors will have to be in the House to tell us this is the reason for which they want to exempt. That is because the reason is not in the memorandum accompanying the bill.
Very well. So I will defer a decision on clause 31. Yes, I'll refer a decision on that so that the sponsors may persuade Parliament that they should not pay tax on the earnings. Yes, leader.
Mr. Speaker, I'm taking a cue from you. The entire clause 31 should be deleted. It should not be part of this bill. I respect the ranking member on constitutional legal, but my fundamental disagreement with him is that once this bill comes in this form with a clause 31, presumption, Mr. Speaker, is that the policy promoter has support for this particular bill. But on income is wrong. If they were going to talk about hydraulic equipment maybe coming in to support their work, and they want us to exempt taxes on that, that we can do for them. But on income accruing from investment, no. You have invested, and government wants more tax from your investment, you want to exempt it. It is wrong. So the whole 31 should go, particularly so that there is an exemption bill before this house. So the whole 31 on income, no step that it should be deleted. Mr. Speaker, put the question on it. We should delete. We should delete.
Mr. Speaker, okay. Mr. Speaker, I think eventually this task. And this authority we are creating is a creation of the state. So eventually, this tax exemption will have to be budgeted by the Ministry of Finance. It will still be borne by the Ministry of Finance. So why would you go ahead and ask them to pay taxes? And then the same money we have to use as tax. So I don't think we need to. This is a creation of the state. Finance Ministry will have to budget for this tax exemption.
Whatever money that is allocated to them for administration,
yes,
will come from the general pool,
yes,
the consolidated fund.
Yes.
Then they have some money which they invest, which earns returns. Yes, part of that returns should go into the pool from which their salaries and administrative charges will be paid. They shouldn't retain that money and still come back to the pool for to take. So the tax there, I think they should pay it. Yes.
So Speaker, I'll just plead that we fly and then let's stand it down and do more consultations on that, please. Sure. Thank you.
Very well. Ranking member is on the street.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As much as I agree that we should step it down, I just want some explanation on this. That even gifts, if we take monetary gift, is subject to tax. And then part of that gift is invested in an investment. And that whatever we accrue from that investment, you want us to pay tax on it again. Won't it be double taxation, Mr. Speaker?
I don't agree with you on that. When you invest your income, it has already been taxed. But any returns on your income is also taxed. So, yes.
It's an income, it's a new income. And you must pay tax on it. Yeah. Any income you pay tax on your income.
Down. We'll defer decision on 31. I'll move to clause 32.
Speaker, the understanding I got from the leader of government business and the majority leader, after he had engaged the chairman of the committee and the modern drafter on this side, the Honorable Bernard Ahiafo, was that when we get to clause 30, we would have sufficiently been seen working on the hydraulic bill, and that the House could consider an adjournment. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, he wanting to travel to 32, Mr. Speaker, I directed the clerk to brief you that I just reached out to Mr. Speaker himself that we have discussed with you, and the guidance is that the House may not sit tomorrow, and therefore you should accept it to be presented today and adjourn the House to Tuesday. That is the understanding I had with the leader of government business and majority leader and whip. So if we have a draft of the business statement, Mr. Speaker, he should be doing justice to it, unless he wants to assure us that we can be doing 32 whilst waiting for the clerks at table whilst they call them. Then, Mr. Speaker, we can engage with your guidance on 32. Just 32, we can be looking at it, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, leader.
Speaker, I think what leader said is true. We have that agreement, but we have a challenge with the table office. I'm sure in a few minutes it will be resolved. I'm in constant communication with the officials of the table office, so not too long, I'm sure it will be ready. So probably in agreement with the minority that we should just be on the 32. In a few minutes, we should have the documents we are all expectant of, and then it could be taken.
Well, I have been so advised, and the table office is trying to get us a draft or copy of the business statement, so we adopt that before we bring proceedings to a close and resume on Tuesday. So in that circumstance, let's while away the time with clause 32.
Power to enter land or premises.
Honourable members, there's no proposed amendment to clause 32, but yes.
Mr. Speaker, with your indulgence and leave, clause 32(1), the second line, but let me read it as for the purpose of carrying out the functions of the authority, an employee authorized by the authority may, after giving notice to the owner. I think that in drafting legal language, we should have said may with prior notice, not may after, prayer notice. And Mr. Speaker, prayer notice is the word prayer has been so defined even by the Supreme Court. But when you say after giving notice, you want that notice is served. So you say with prior notice or upon prior notice to the owner or occupier. But when you say, I hear for you went and learn your modern drafting, what English is may after given notice, may after given notice, after given prior notice. Thank you.
What is the difference between after giving notice and prior notice? They are the same, and you want to be as plain as simple as possible.
Mr. Speaker, I'm guided by the third line. Occupier of any land or premises. I didn't see property there. Is this what we want? Premises, property. Premises without property. Power to enter land or premises. Mr. Speaker, is premises enough?
Yes, ranking member, is premises enough?
Mr. Speaker, premises has been defined in the interpretation, and I read, premises include a building, ship, caravan, but does not include a building or place used exclusively as a dwelling place, which is quite problematic, Mr. Speaker. Does that mean that if the particular structure is hindering a hydrological service, once it's a dwelling, that particular property will not be touched? Yes, because it is said the definition exempts, except it includes a building or a place used exclusively as a dwelling place, and does not include.
What are you reading, please?
Mr. Speaker, premises in the interpretation.
Interpretation of premises.
Yeah, premises. And it attempts to exclude a particular type of building called dwellings. And Mr. Speaker, I thought half of the problems in this, in our cities, in terms of structures obstructing natural causes of runoffs, are dwellings. So if you make this law and exempt them, Chairman, I think we may need to redefine premises when we get there. But take a look and you realize that we may actually make the law entirely our own hands. Yes, exactly.
Well noted. I think we'll take note of that. Thank you.
I think if you don't redefine premises, you cannot implement the law. So premises, the definition will include property, but here they are saying that residential property is not included. Then you might as well, because Even kiosks placed on waterways are used as dwelling places, and so we will look at that. Very well. So I can put the question on 32 and then bring consideration to a stage. So all in favor of clause 32 being a part of the bill, say aye. Yeah, yes, yes.
Mr. Speaker, I thought the proposal is for clause 32 to be deferred because, Mr. Speaker, honestly speaking, looking at the words in 32, I don't understand the entire provision. Mr. Speaker, it states, for the purpose of carrying out the functions of the authority, an employee authorized by the authority may, after giving notice to the owner or occupier of any land, the word is any land. It's not restricted to land being occupied by the authority or the land that authority has control over. They are talking about any land. And Mr. Speaker, the definition of land includes your house and my house. So is that what you want to legislate?
If it is for hydrological purposes, then they can enter any land.
But Mr. Speaker, it went further to say that to do reasonably necessary for carrying out the functions of the authority and may in particular, A, inspect and examine land, building, and equipment of hydrological station. Then B, inspect and examine accounts, records, and memoranda required to be kept by hydrological station. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the A, B, C, D, it cannot be any land. It can't be.
On that note, let's.
Mr. Speaker, that is why we have to
That is
defend
why
this particular
law
clause.
making it a process. We've gone through the objects, the functions, so the coverage areas are there. So we are speaking about hydrological services. It's clear.
Very well.
The objects, the functions are
we
still
will
here.
defer. I thought you would have.
So the coverage area is here.
I thought we would have done winnowing, but it appears that you have not done winnowing sufficiently on that. But we will defer decision on 32 as well, and bring consideration to a close for today. Honourable members, that brings us to the end of consideration of the Ghana Hydrological Authority Bill 2021 for today. Honourable members, in view of the circumstances and the decision taking in respect of the House sittings tomorrow, we will come back to the business statement, and I invite the Majority Chief Whip to present the business statement for the week ensuing. For the ensuing week, yes. Honourable Majority Chief Whip.
Speaker, present the business statement for the ensuing week for and on behalf of the Leader of the House. Speaker, the Business Committee met today and has programmed accordingly for the 8th week ended Friday, 15th July 2022. A program of activities. Speaker, I invite the Hansard Department to capture the entirety of it, and I intend to limit myself to a few portions. Speaker, In all, 55 questions have been programmed, and out of the 55, 47 are oral questions and 8 are agent questions. Speaker may take statements in accordance with order 72. Papers may be laid, motions and their consequential resolutions taken duly. Speaker, we want to urge committee leadership, particularly rankings and chairman, to assiduously work on referrals before them in the face of the time we have for rising. Speaker, leadership is yet to confirm, most probably coming Tuesday, for the Minister for Food and Agriculture to appear before the House to brief us on matters related to the poultry industry. Leadership is doing the same to with the Minister of the Interior, specific to the National Identification Authority, on other considerations and concerns that were raised by members. Speaker, concerns about national security briefing, we are reliably informed, leadership is reliably informed that the sector minister had already met the committee, your committee on defense and interior. So we are in discussion with the committee leadership to find an appropriate day for plenary to be briefed on briefings that were given by the minister to the committee. So that the committee reiterates that barring any unforeseen circumstances, this House is expected to adjourn Senate Day on Thursday, 28 July 2022. Speaker, I so present the business statement for the ensuing week. I thank you.
Very well, honourable members. Any comment on the business statement? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Education finished its work on the UNESCO bill, which had its report late yesterday. I was expecting that second reading will be advertised for next week, but it's conspicuously missing. Can the Business Committee arrange so that it can be taken during Mr. Speaker?
Yes, Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I've learned my lesson, so this matter I'm bringing to the fore. I raised it at the Business Committee. Mr. Speaker, road contractors across the country are living in some limbo and panic on some directive by the Minister for Roads or the Ministry of Roads as to the status of road contractors, who can do what and with what certificate. And it's an urgent matter, Mr. Speaker. It's affecting all persons associated with road construction work generally. So we need the Minister for Roads and Highways to come to this House, because, Mr. Speaker, as I heard from the contractors, it is that you don't belong to this category, you don't qualify for this work, you can't do this work, and it will mean that people who hitherto survive as contractors will be out of job as a result of the action and decision of the road minister. So I raised it at Business Committee that he must come and give us an update on the fate of all contractors working with the road ministry. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Bongo first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last week, under the briefing by the Minister for Food and Agriculture, I had made a proposal that there was also yet another concern that had to do with the package for workers of the ministry in terms of supervising the various farms that have been affected by the A1 outbreak. The understanding I got from the leader was that it was going to be added. So I thought that this week, the fact that he didn't come this week to brief us, I thought that the rephrasing of this would have included that. Because in this House, we are always tempted to, when the minister comes to speak on something, and then, what I say, what's it?
Are you addressing me or?
The leader seemed not to have been following what I was saying. So I was just saying that last week, I had proposed that beyond just looking at the compensation packages to the farms, that there was a need to also look at the logistics that were made available to the workers, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, the veterinary officers and other things, in supervising these particular farms. Particularly, the information we have is that as in June, the figures are going up, and the workers seem not to have the necessary logistics to work on. So we felt that that should be part of the briefing for us to know that. So I thought this week's phrasing of this particular briefing would have included that, because this house we seem to be to have the penchant for, when a minister comes to talk about something and then there's no, for example, if the logistic aspect is not added and you ask him a question on that, mostly they'll tell you that he didn't prepare, so he'll go and come back. And since this has to do with the same problem or challenge, I thought that that should be properly captured, particularly when the leader last week indicated that it was a good suggestion, they were going to add it to it. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Right, Honourable Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity, and we thank the leader for the business statement. Mr. Speaker, just to add to what the minority leader has said, if our colleague, the road minister, who has been very diligent in the House, to members answering questions, could also take on board this issue of former toll workers who have been in the news severally, complaining about their jobs taken away and not reassigned, and their salaries not paid. If our colleague can take note, if he schedules him, if he could add that to one of his briefing as to what he is doing to ensure that the former toll workers, those who are manning the tolls, who are now unemployed as a result of the shutdown of the toll collections, if they can deal with that. Mr. Speaker, I can see something appearing on the business statement for some time now. Referral to committees. Right, Honourable Speaker, again, urges committee. I would urge leadership of the of Parliament to find out why so many referrals to committees appear to be going to one way. They go there and they never come back with any report. Perhaps there's something that leadership need to pay attention to be able to empower the committees for sitting and bringing reports of whatever referrals are sent to them. It is very, very important. Otherwise, we may be repeating this particular rendition for quite some time, which is not very helpful to any of us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have observed from the business statement that we are likely to have briefings from the Minister for Food and Agriculture, National Identification Authority, and then Minister for National Security on 12 July. That is Tuesday. And on the same day, we have about 21 questions scheduled for that particular day. Knowing very well the follow-ups that come after these briefings, and then the follow-ups with the questions. Won't it be an overload for one day? Thank you.
Yes. Leader.
Speaker, with respect to the UNESCO bill, I recall the document was laid by the ranking member. Seeing it missing in the business statement, this comes as a surprise to me. I'm sure it's inadvertent. So we will relate appropriately. And I'm reliably informed that it's part of the motions slated for next week. Probably you should apprise yourself, Honorable Ranking. Yes, concerns about road contractors, as was raised by the respective minority leader. He did raise that the business committee, and I'm sure that we'll be guided accordingly to inform the sector minister, I meant the road minister, to prepare accordingly to speak to us on this matter. we are all aware of his diligence and how dutiful he's attend upon the House every Friday. So we will do the needful, colleagues. On the toll workers, yes, I recall some petition was received by a section of leadership already being submitted to the appropriate quarters. So we will look at what is important is that we also have to brief the minister on the content of the petition so that he comes ready and prepared. So I'll relate to the leaders. I recall it was the Honorable Lydia Alasan and then my good friend, Honorable Ahmed, who met them and received the petition for and behalf of Speaker. The matter raised by Honorable Bawa related to my Greek minister, I don't have details of it. What I would do, we can meet and then you apprise me of the details and then we can carry him along. On referrals, as was related to by a colleague, what I intend to communicate or what the business committee intends to communicate is that we realize that most of the referrals done, it's work in motion or work in progress. And the leadership of the committee are still working on it. But I also get the sense you are trying to communicate that we should relate and find out if they do have challenges so that we work in tandem and ensure that timeously we deal with these referrals. I'm in total agreement. I thank you, Speaker.
Very well. Yes, last one.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, looking at item 2B, with respect to the number of questions that have been admitted this week, it says, Right Honourable Speaker, I know 7 ministers are expected to attend upon the House to respond to 56 questions during the week. However, if you do the summation there, it's 55. But if you go on and do a manual count of the number of questions that have been admitted this week, it's 57. I don't know whether we could do a proper reconciliation and know the number of questions that have been admitted for the week. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. You will take notes and make the proper correction. Honourable members, the business statement for the ensuing week is hereby adopted for implementation. Now it is nearly 3:30, so I'll bring proceedings to a close. The House is accordingly adjourned till Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the forenoon. Tuesday is July 12th. Is that right? Yes. Tuesday, July 12th, 2022 at 10 o'clock in the forenoon.